go. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Stacy Kopsha. I'm a member of your Board of Trustees. I use she, her pronouns. I would like to welcome you to Tahoma Unitarian Universalist Church today. Longtime members and new visitors alike, you are welcome here. Whether you're joining us online or on site in the sanctuary, we're glad you're here. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders, and love is the power that holds us together. You are welcome just as you are. If this is your first time visiting, I bid you a special welcome. After the service, I'll be at the back of the sanctuary or around. If you have any questions, I'm sure anyone with any member would be happy to talk to you. For those of you here, there's hearing assistant devices back at the end of the sanctuary, as well as large print hymnals. For those online, there's a chat chaplain who will help you navigate that today. And for the people here in the sanctuary, there'll be the screen behind me with the words to the songs and out loud readings. On the order of service, you'll see our website, tahomauu.com, and on it, you can find a way to scan a QR code to get on the list for our e-news. And there's a lot going on. I'll highlight a few things. The first is the Covenant of UU I keep seeing penguins. And so pagans meeting, right? Or the cups, I'll say cups, on July 13th at 5:30 at Chuck and Teresa's house. They will be having a meeting and a potluck. They will supply hot dogs and drinks. And if you're interested, please RSVP to the email, which is listed in the e-news. There's also a fundraiser going on by our translocation committee to raise funds for families locating to this area as a safe zone from other states. It will be held at the Rise and Shine Cabaret Cafe and will be held July 19th at 6 p.m. There's a family friendly showing, and then an adults only at 9 p.m. There is a link in the e-news, and I think Chrissy
We'll have flyers after the service.
Chrissy will have flyers available at the end of service today. And we're still looking for RE volunteers for the summer. Kids are just having free play downstairs. If you're interested, there's a link on the e-news, or at the entrance to the church, there's a poster board, and you could just write your name on that too. You don't have to do anything, but just sit and be present and supervise the kids. But there is a background check that's required. And David Pettit is going to do a quick announcement on the annual camping trip.
Good morning, everybody. My name is David. Years past, every year we had a traditional camping trip that went on the back burner during COVID. We started again last year, and we are getting ready to do it again this year. It will be the third weekend of August. So that is Friday, the 16th, Saturday, and Sunday. I have sign-up sheets here so that I can get personal information, email address, and that kind of jazz. I've got maps and a little description of all the activities in the area, things to do. We're going to be camping same place we did last year, Gust Backstrom City Park in the town of Morton. Now it's out on the outskirts of town. It's right on the banks of the Tilton River, which is more like a really large creek. It's not much of a river in August anymore. There's places for kids to wade. There's fishing, there's swimming. We had a ball last year. If you've got any interest in that, would like to get some more information, you can talk to me after the service. I'll hang around for coffee for a half an hour or something like that. Or check the e-news. There's an announcement in the e-news that has my email address in there, and you can contact me that way also. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you, David. There's also the option, if you don't want to camp out, I think people will just show up for an evening or for a day. Yeah, so if you're not into camping or an overnight, but you're welcome. It's not a far drive, and just Yes, and David said if you don't have a tent, for those of you who didn't hear and people online, if you don't have a tent, just ask him. There's tents to be loaned. So just talk to David. Let's see. Again, I ask you to check our e-news for these and other events and volunteer opportunities. You're welcome to join us at the end of service for some social and coffee hour over here. If you're new and you would like to talk, pick up a red mug and that'll clue us in to it. And let's see. For our land acknowledgement, I respectfully acknowledge that I speak to you today from the land of Coast Salish people, including the Puyallup Tribal Nation, land from which they were forcibly displaced. I affirm the continued sovereignty of the 574 federally recognized tribes, including the 29 here in Washington state, and support those still fighting for federal recognition. I acknowledge the theft, the violence, trauma, and racism that Indigenous people have experienced at the hands of colonizers from 1492 through the present day. I honor the resiliency of the Indigenous people and stand with them as they continue to fight for water, land, visibility, and sovereignty, and their very existence. Lastly, I invite you to set your phones and electronic devices to worship mode. Thank you for being here today. I ask you to take a deep breath as we come together and worship.
Good morning. Well, that's nice to get back. The power of the podium. First thing I'm going to do this morning, I'm William Fleet. I'm a middle-aged male, but actually at 61, I'm guessing I'm older male now, I have to say. I used to say salt and pepper hair. Now it's white with accents. And the weight is none of your business. I want to thanks to the worship committee, to Francis and Scott for suggesting that I do this. It's probably something that if it hadn't been suggested, I wouldn't do, but I was just waiting to be asked, so I would. So I appreciate that. I'm on the worship committee, and standing up here is maybe not the easiest thing for a lot of you, but even if Reverend Crystal comes back to us, we still have about half the sermons of the year that we need to fill within our own. And if you don't feel comfortable standing up front, that's fine. Partner with someone that does. If you feel comfortable doing time for all ages, then, come up and read the children a story, maybe audio visual, whatever you think you might be able to do to contribute, because really we come to church not to see God. God we can see anywhere. We come to church for community. And so be part of that community, be an active part of that community. And the more active we are, the more vibrant the group is going to be. You're going to have to excuse me. I should have bifocals, but I don't. So I'm going to take the glasses on and off, and that's just the way that works out. If I see something clever today, feel free to steal it. I go to a lot of different churches, and I see that most pastors, they don't have a lot of original thoughts. They're stealing, and they've been stealing for thousands of years. So if I say something that means something to you and you want to share it to somebody else, don't say, I heard this guy at church say it. Steal it and own it, and try to pass it on as something that's your own. It'll make much more impact on the listener. And really, that's the whole point of a service, is that we're going to change people's thinking, help them think about things in new ways. 5 years ago, I never would have seen myself standing up in front of people in any kind of church. Sundays were for golf, pretty much, maybe soccer, but certainly not church. Now I go to 5 or 6 different churches. I lose track because I see the divine in my life. I go to church not so that I can go to heaven. I'm not even sure I want to go to heaven, but I go to church to pay reverence to the divine interaction that I've had in my life. Somebody is helping me. And boy, it's got to be God, whatever God might be to you. I call it God. It could be the divine. I really don't know. I see myself as a seeker, not as a believer. If I say I believe, that means I have to defend my beliefs with something. And I would rather be a learner. And so I keep that learner's heart and try not to say that I believe anything, because I'm constantly seeing new things. For me, that works. But if I insult you today in some way, I apologize. I'm going to say God, because to me, that's just who I'm talking about. But at least, as far as the background, that I see God as all gods, that God wouldn't be exclusive. God would be inclusive. And so for me, I see God as everywhere, and I'm in constant prayer. I have an inner spark, an inner feeling that God is within me, right? And so he sends me what I call tugs. I'm not supposed to watch the news. The news, I'll obsess about the news, as I'll share later, and see a story on the news that I just can't get out of my head. So I choose not to watch the news. But God, because God has a sense of humor, forces me to give care every day to a gentleman who watches the news 5 hours a day. And not only the news, we watch Fox News for 5 hours a day, which is a challenge, but gives me something to obsess about. So I see Gaza, and Gaza is a problem for me. There's problems on both sides. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me, none at all. But God kept sending me these tugs. Go to temple. Now I'm already attending, a Baha'i service. It was nice to see my friends from Meaningful Conversation show up today, and some people online. And in addition, my cousins are online from the East Coast, and I want to recognize Bill and Lisa, because it's nice to have that kind of family support, even if you can't be here. I ordered a coffee today. It was far too large, and the room is far too warm. So if I seem a little amped up, blame the weather. But anyhow, so God kept sending me this tug, go to temple, go to temple, go to temple. So I started going to temple about 3 weeks ago. It's the most foreign thing that I could do. You show up, they've got a high level of security at their church. I mean, much different than what we have here. And everyone's looking at you kind of cross-eyed as, what the heck are you doing here? Everything's in Hebrew and the book's going backwards. And, it's a tough service to get through. So I got through that first one and I'm filled with anxiety. And I'm talking to God on the way home. All right. Thanks very much for that. I make a commitment when I go to a new church to go for a minimum of 6 weeks. It's great. So I got 5 more weeks of this. You want to tell me what the point of this is? Well, then I'm sitting where Francis is sitting 2 weeks ago, and I look up and the Judaism little stone art is there, and right below it is Islam. And God spoke to me. I'm going to temple so that I can go to mosque, which is even more foreign, because it's the only way that I can make sense of Gaza. That I think, and I've seen some real hate in that temple. When I've told people what I'm doing there, you'd think they'd be receptive. Wow, you're trying to make sense of this, and and this is how you're doing it. No, they have as much hate for the Muslims as the Muslims do for the Jews. They're all here to kill us. We're better off killing them than before they kill us. It just doesn't make any sense. But eventually, I'm going to work my way to mosque. And I think God wants me to tell you all this. And I think as Unitarians, we should welcome that type of idea, that maybe more of us go to temple and more of us go to mosque, that maybe we can start to make some sense of this. If they see that other people are doing that rather than just complaining on Fox News, about the state of the world and trying to do something active about changing it, and at least participate in the conversation, then maybe we can make an impact. Maybe it'll make more sense to the rest of us. So those are my opening thoughts. The rest will be on anxiety and, take a real upturn. So our chalice lighter today was kind enough to be Janie Clocks, simply because she was here early. Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm supposed to read the words. Once they're okay. There we go. So if you want to read along, we light this chalice in deep respect for the mystery and holiness of life, in honor and gratitude for those who have gone before, with love and compassion for those who dwell among us, and with hope and faith for the generations to come. And now we're going to do number 389, our opening hymn, and Sheila's going to lead us. Gathered here in mystery. Oh, rise in body or spirit.
We are going to sing through one time in unison, and then Mary Ann will lead this side for part 1, and I will lead this side for part 2. So we'll sing through twice in all. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. We weren't sure if we were supposed to start again. Follow directions. I know, right?
All right, there doesn't seem to be a lot of kids here, but we're still going to do time for all ages. So if you're a youngster and would like to hear the story, come up front. And if not, I need adults that are willing to be on their knees to hear it.
I gotcha.
kid questions, and they already have all the answers. Plus, the longer I talk to children, the less I have to talk to adults today, which that's a big advantage too. Do I learn? I'm sorry for that. Do you ever get worried about stuff? Not really? Well, you're blessed. Yes, yes.
I'm trying to raise it up. Yeah, it needs to
All
be
right.
closer to
It can be right there. All right.
Oh, yeah, that would be so easy. I'm trying to make it way harder.
3 on a mic is bad luck. All right. Thank you. All right. The girl in today's story makes pickle faces when she gets nervous. Do you have a pickle face? Pickle face? Can you make a pickle face? Like you're eating something sour? Yes. Yeah, I was going to bring sour worms, but then I thought, well, if I just gave those out, people might feel that was inappropriate. Anyhow, it's a story about anxiety. Thank you very much. We're going to sing the children out. Sometimes the simplest advice is the best. What do we know about tomorrow? Very little. But that's what we spend all of our time worrying about. But we can't control it, and we don't know what tomorrow is going to be. It could be an adventure. But we always think about our failures of the past, and for some reason turn that into anxiety. But as long as we just let tomorrow be what tomorrow is going to be, because there's really very little that we can do about it, anxiety can disappear. At least that's what I'm hoping to deal with today. High school didn't go well for me. I graduated in 1981. And even though I tried to fit into a lot of different groups, it just felt like I wasn't fitting into any group. And then shortly after high school, John Hughes started coming out with movies. The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller. These were movies that, oh, sorry, did I miss something? Oh, we got to take the offering. Like Francis, I just zoomed right ahead. All right, so we're going to do the offering.
Thank you, Bill. I love that story. That was great.
Oh, Chris.
This religious community exists by its mission as a fire exists by burning. But a fire cannot burn without fuel. And it is the time, the energy, the imagination, vision, creativity, the compassion, the love, and the financial support of the members and friends of this community that fuels our mission to nurture and sustain a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse liberal religious community that transforms lives and serves the world. I can see the baskets are being passed already. Thank you so much. And now let's enjoy a musical interlude from Mary Ann.
That was lovely. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to do the dedication. We dedicate ourselves and our offerings to the work of this congregation, weaving a tapestry of love we call community, both within and beyond these walls. Appreciate your generosity. Air conditioners may be on the way. And now we're going to do, I'm back online, 1006 in your hymnal, In My Quiet Sorrow.
I am worn, I am tired, in my quiet sorrow. Hopelessness will not let me be. Help me. I won't speak of this ache. Inside light eludes me. Hopelessness will not let me be. And pray. I keep on day by day, trusting light will guide me. Will you be with me through this time, holding me? You're my hope when I fear, holding on, believing. Deep inside I pray I'm strong, blessed be.
I had a nice little reading about depression. We're going to skip that. Back to John Hughes. He suddenly came out with these movies after I left high school that made high school totally different for me. You mean everybody was thinking that? Wait a minute. Holy cow. I watched these movies 40 years later. I had a John Hughes Film Festival last week just for myself. And these movies hold up after 40 years. I mean, you look at these and yeah, it really still speaks to you about what adolescence was like. And if John Hughes was alive today, rest in peace, he died about 20 years ago from a massive heart attack. But he'd be writing about depression, I think, because depression is pervasive in our world and everyone believes that they're alone. It's part of the disease. The Surgeon General came out with a report in 2003 that talked about the epidemic of loneliness and depression. And only behind obesity is it the #1 killer of Americans in the US today. It's hard to believe, but 7 out of 10 people will face serious depression in the course of their lifetimes. Those thoughts will include thoughts of suicide. 40% of all men kill themselves faster than women, or at a higher rate than women, 40% higher. 22 veterans kill themselves on a daily basis. 60% of all people who identify themselves as transgender kill themselves in our country. This is without or with surgery. It does not matter whether or not, and it's much higher in this country than anywhere else. The highest suicide rate is only compared to those people that knew that they were going to a Nazi death camp. You have to find, those are the only people in the last 100 years that have killed themselves at a higher rate than the transgender people in our world today. 1 in 4 men say that they have no friends at all. And none of us talk about it, which is a real tragedy, because once we realize that we're not alone in thinking this, well, things come together. So my hope today is I take you through some of my journey And in it, maybe you can see some things for you, because there's a happy ending. I'm still standing here. And so we'll take you through some of it. I hope to do it better than I did speaking of the future, but you don't know until you know. The letter that we had to do last month, where we had to write a letter to ourselves in the future, I wrote it down, had a week in advance, and every time I read it out loud, I started crying. And it was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to stand up in front of the entire church and cry? Get it together. Read it maybe 50 times and could not do it without crying, which told me a valuable lesson that I'm still very much broken, that I'm just a thread away from being back in a hard place, and I have to watch myself. It's weird how the brain works. The brain's main job is to protect the ego and the id. So when the brain's not working right, the last thing it wants to do is tell you the truth. And you'll believe any lie that the brain tells you, right? You know, you can see illness in others. You'll look at others and say, man, that guy's got problems. But you won't see it in yourself, because that's the way our brains are wired. As a kid, I had no idea that the thoughts I had were strange. I didn't know until somebody called me weird, right? I thought everybody thought exactly the way that I was thinking, and I couldn't have been more wrong. But it took me, and has taken me, 60 years to figure some of that stuff out. Because in my mind, it seems perfectly normal, because those are the only thoughts that I can kind of compare them to. So let me kind of share my history. You don't know how far back to go. I know I've always been obsessive compulsive. We were talking about it at dinner last night. As a child, I didn't like my food to touch. So, you know, I wasn't a big fan of gravy, because gravy would, you know, touch all your food. Mixed vegetables took me a long time to eat, because you had to separate the carrots and the peas, and yeah, it was just, please don't serve me mixed vegetables. My wife, after 5 years of marriage, was kind enough to inform me that I ate my food in a clockwise manner. I didn't know this until she told me. I really wish she hadn't told me, because now I think about that all the time as I'm eating. Am I eating this in a clockwise fashion? Should I maybe just eat counterclockwise? But it's hard to do. I rock all the time. People see me rocking, and that's my number one soother. I'm rocking now. I was rocking before. I'll rock on the drive home. I use the pronoun we, because there are we. I have an internal voice, but it doesn't work as well unless I'm talking out loud. And the one side of me is very passive, and there's another side of me that is much more aggressive. He's looking out for my best interest. We have a conversation sort of like this. William, you're really obsessing too much about this speech on Sunday. It's your life. You don't really have to obsess about that. Just speak frankly. You've done speeches thousands of times. You're going to be fine. Unless I said that out loud, I wouldn't have heard it. And after I'm done, I will coach all the way home. I'm not the type of person that sings in the car, but boy, do I have long dialogues. And that inner voice, that is external voice, has been with me my entire life. And it used to be that I was ashamed of it, but now I just kind of own it. And when I go to the cemetery, which is a huge part of my meditation and a huge part of my getting well, and would be part 2 of the sermon if this one's well received, is the meditation that I do in cemeteries, I'm talking constantly. And that's in prayer. And it sounds, but I work everything out. I don't need therapy because I'm able to do that. But I thought for a long, long time, even though I had these obsessive compulsive tendencies, I thought that I had it under control. At 52 years old, I had been married for 29 years. I was a corporate executive. I was the director of operations for a large international company, and had done that for 17 years. Was making a lot of money, and really just had to live out another 4 years of my life. If I had just lived out another 4 years, I would have retired at 56 and had plans of Costa Rica. And for some reason, just couldn't do it. It was a perfect storm of events that suddenly brought ADHD into my life, which is adult autism, okay? My obsessive compulsive versus ADHD is like putting a Porsche engine into a Pinto wagon, which was one of my first cars. The car slowly rips itself apart. It's not designed for that. It's slow and fast at the same time. I'm bipolar. None of this was diagnosed till I was in my 50s. And my therapist would jokingly said, William, you can't be bipolar because you don't have enough good days. Therapists are so much fun. I have PTSD, which, again, tricky to be dealing with when you're living in your car because there's noises and things that scare the heck out of you. And 4th of July was a difficult time. But I'm also highly empathic. I was tested by, and I don't know if I should trust this because the man wore a turban and it's the only person in life that I've never known that had a turban on. But he told me that I rated very high on the empathic scale, wanted to know what other gifts or abilities that I might have. What are you suggesting? Well, can you see the future? Can you talk to animals? Well, I can talk to animals, but I don't think they answer back. I'm pretty sure. And for $200, he was willing to educate me on what other higher talents I might have as far as being empathic. It's hard to see empathic as being a talent. Seeing other people's pain has not been a really good thing for me, but there are certain people that I can go to and tell them all about their lives without them having to say very much to me at all. And I have this yearning to help them feel better. And, funny enough, strangers don't appreciate that either. You walk up to a stranger and I can tell you about your pain and I want to help you. That's none of your business. And it's hard to lie to an empath. And I had a person say to me, I should have the right to lie to you. And so I said, you're right, you should. So I don't do readings on people unless they ask, unless there's a real close connection. I try to kind of ignore what I see. But I thought all these problems that I had were things I could manage. It gave me a work ethic like no one else. I could work a 20-hour day and did so for 17 years. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, took emails from the East Coast, dealt with my overnight situations, and there were a lot of them usually, and then would shut down around 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and took a nap in the afternoon, but for the most part did that for 17 years. If a 5 o'clock appointment called off, I wouldn't exactly know what to do, but I would find something. If the 6 o'clock appointment called off too, I was at a complete loss. Totally would lock up. But still in all, felt like this was an advantage for me in the workplace. If I could only find one more person like me, I could change the company I worked for. Thank goodness I never found that person because I didn't see the illness that I had, right? Then at 50, someone gave me a Fitbit. Now, if you know an obsessive compulsive person in your life, don't give them a Fitbit. I walked 20 miles a day for 3 years. I never missed a day. I walked until I was in critical care for about 10 days and then never walked again. But during that time, I never took the Fitbit off. I had to do my 20 miles a day. I would walk the BPA trail, which is up in Federal Way, from the tips, which is 14.6 miles, every day, wind, rain, snow, birth of my son, death of my father, all those days I walked my miles and felt like I was getting better for it. It was the start of the end. Spirals for me lasted sometimes up to 2 years, where I would suddenly put myself into a self-destructive vent and not realize I was doing it. When my father passed away, it was tough, but too tough. I cried for months, just could not get a grip, and didn't really see the problem of it. Then my company was bought by Canadians, and they took away my position, said that my position could now be a vice presidency in Nashville, Tennessee. But my father just passed. My son was a senior in high school. My wife was with Boeing for 30 years. It just did not seem like a good time to go to Nashville, Tennessee. But if you're 50 years old and someone offers you a vice presidency in Nashville, Tennessee, my advice is take the job. Find a way to make it work, because my market value at 50 wasn't nearly the same walking away into the marketplace. When I finally allowed myself to apply for a job at the spaghetti factory as a manager, I was told, no, they wanted somebody that could work a full career. Well, I'm 50 years old. I mean, I'll give you 20 years in the food industry, that's pretty darn good. No, they were more happy to hire someone that had a much less expectation. They looked at my resume and saw how much I had been making. This was not going to be a job for me. But I had thought, wow, I'm finally willing to accept this position, and no positions came my way. Wound up getting a divorce, wound up losing the house, letting go of all the things, and I had a backpack that was 5 storage units large. Lived off of that for years, but letting go of those possessions and those things was really tough. And that sent me into my first spiral. I never thought about killing myself. I never said, and now I will kill myself. I had $10,000 in the bank, and I slowly started going to cheap hotels when you could still find cheap hotels. And I was going to go to those hotels, and then when the money was gone, I guess the conclusion would be that I would hurt myself. But I don't remember saying, and then I will commit suicide. But the further and further along I went on the road, and it took me about 6 months to deplete all the money, the more and more depressed that I became. And the more and more stuff that I would haul into a hotel room, to haul into my car, to 2 days move to the next hotel room, to 2 days more. The day before I was about to hurt myself, and this is where the story gets good. I'm walking down the road in Seattle. It's an overcast day. I'm not crying. I'm keeping to myself. It's not a great day, but it's just a day. A total stranger walks up to me and says, "Are you doing okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm doing fine." She moves on. About 20 minutes later, another total stranger walks up to me and says, "Are you doing all right?" Yeah. So I go running to a bathroom, and I wanted to check a mirror, because what are these people seeing in my face that they have to ask me if I'm doing all right? I didn't see anything. The next day, I made an attempt, and I was not successful. I was at Dash Point Park and thought that I was at the park at closing time. And my plan was to go into the woods and take a large dose of something. I was falling asleep against a tree, thought this is about what I want, and the next few minutes, next thing I know, there's an intubation tube that's being put down my throat. And according to what they said, someone called in 911 to say that I was looking sad. But to my knowledge, there was nobody in that parking lot. To me, these were angels that were stopping me from doing whatever it was I was about to do. And angels come to me periodically through people to stop me from doing some of the things that I've tried to do. Every time I've tried to kill myself, they've been there. I next put myself into a spiral, and that's where I kind of came to this church, because I had been in my car for 18 months. It was a series of unfortunate events. The Lemony Snicket books, okay, well, that was my life. I had made a series of unfortunate events, and it put me in my car, and I couldn't get out of the car. And once I was in the car, I thought the car was sanctuary, but the car turned into a prison. I would go for months without talking to people. Over those 18 months, I maybe had 3 conversations that were more than 4 or 5 sentences, but I would just stay in the car all the time. This week is 2-year anniversary of sobriety for me. It started by a person that came to me and said that they needed a ride to the store. Could I please give them a ride? And I'm a sucker for a damsel in distress. If someone comes to me with a need, I want to treat them as though they were a loved one, right? If I had a loved one that was out there looking for help, needing assistance, I wouldn't want a stranger to refuse them. So yes, of course, I will take you wherever you need to go, but I have no gas money. So you're gonna need to give me, oh, no problem, I'm gonna give you $10 for gas. Well, she goes into a 7-Eleven and never comes out. So I have no gas in my car. This puts me at the International House of Pancakes on Hosmer on the 3rd of July, 2 years ago. It's hot as heck. I had no shoes. That's a whole different sermon. My phone had been stolen. I had no money. My windows were rolled down. My battery was dead. I had no gas, just enough gas to maybe get me to the gas station. For the first time ever, I write a sign that says, no shoes, no money, no wallet, losing hope. And I have my hood up on the car. And no one approached me for 4 days. My mother's anniversary of her birth is the 6th or the 10th of January. And I'm sitting in this parking lot at the International House of Pancakes fantasizing about breakfast because I have no food. A guy came to me on the 3rd and brought me 4 corn dogs, just out of the blue. Walks up to the car, here you go, I've got some food for you. Hands me 4 corn dogs, I hate corn dogs. But after about 20 seconds, there's nothing left but sticks. And he gives me a bag of Bacos, which, you know, I would never think of as an entree item. But, but 2 days later, I had eaten an entire bag of Bacos, which is a soybean-like bacon product that's super salty, and if you don't have any water in the car, eating a bag of Bacos is a big mistake. Well, on the 10th of July, after I'd been in this parking lot for a week, I'd taken down my sign, I'd just given up. A woman walks up to the car at 6 o'clock in the morning, taps on my window, and says, "Can I take you to breakfast?" And yes, of course, I'm not wearing shoes. She takes me in International House of Pancakes, has me order whatever I want, and gives me a $50 bill at the end of it. Now, I'm not asking for money, and why I didn't ask her name, I do not know. I was just so dumbstruck. I mean, it was just so amazing. And that $50 got me gas. And when I went to the gas station, there was a guy that sold me a pair of size 13 tennis shoes that were brand new for 10 bucks. And that was my road to recovery. That's how it started. That's an angel. I lost my wallet 6 times during the 18 months that I was in the car. Lost my wallet with ID. It's shameful, but 6 times. If I lost it another time, that would have been it. But I was at Wapato Lake, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking for beauty. I had decided that I needed to get out of the car and look for beauty. And so I'm looking for beauty, and as I get back in the car, I leave my wallet, my phone on the top of my car. And get in my car and drive away. And didn't realize that I'd left them on the top of the car. Now, I drove for about 10 miles, and when I got to where I was going, my wallet and phone were still on the top of my car. They shouldn't have been there. I went over speed bumps. I mean, you know, I was doing 40 miles an hour, and there's no way that wallet and phone should have been on the top of my car. But somebody knew that if I lost that wallet and phone, that would have been it. That would have been the backbreaker. That's divine intervention. It has to be. I was going to end it all at a parking lot. I had a hot shot ready, and if you don't know what a hot shot is, it's a lethal dose that you would inject into yourself. I had it all ready to go. I'm in an empty parking lot, and 10 minutes later, I'm surrounded by people staring at me, making me feel so self-conscious, I couldn't do it. That's divine intervention. I don't understand why. I don't pray for help like that. I didn't pray for help like that at the time, but I've received that help, and that's the reason why I go to 6 different churches, because I know I'm not God, or pretty sure I'm not. God has a sense of humor, and if I was, wouldn't it be a damn thing if all the things I was looking for in life, all I had to do was grant? But it doesn't seem to work that way, and I really don't understand why I'm given this insight and why I've been given this second chance, but I have. And there's others out there that are just as lost. I thought I had all the answers, but I'm happier today having very few of the answers than I was at the time having what I thought all the answers. I'm going to tell a little story. I'm number 3. And it's something that happened to me about 6 years ago. I had just broken up with the love of my life for the 23rd time. Again, a sermon you don't want to hear. It's a Sunday morning, and I get a call from the Bellevue police. And they tell me that my good friend Dwayne has killed himself. I said, "What? I just saw him. What's he doing in Bellevue? I mean, he lives on Hilltop in Tacoma. It doesn't make any sense." It wasn't the same Dwayne. But we're having a hard time finding a way to identify the body. Would you be kind enough to come up and identify this guy's body? Look, man, I don't think I know this guy. Well, you're in his note, so we think you should come up. And I said yes, and went up. And sure enough, I remember Dwayne. Going back, it was 1987. This happened 5 years ago that Dwayne ended it. But I knew him in 1987. I was at a very social job. We had a party every Friday night. And Dwayne would sit in this room every Friday night in black pants and an orange shirt, bright orange shirt. And I went and I sat next to him and I whispered in his ear, "Are you by chance colorblind?" And he said yes. That someone picks out his clothes and he had, because I said, is Friday orange shirt day? Because he had his clothes laid out in his closet based on the color. So Thursday was a blue day and Friday was always the orange day, but he had no idea. And someone set his clothes up that way. Now, I sat with Dwayne and he was an odd guy. He dated one of the women at the work, and he would sit all by himself, and when people were having conversations in the room, he would, in a time prior to The Simpsons, have these little cartoon conversations of what he guessed they might be talking about. So he would, do both sides of the conversation, then move around to another conversation. To my mind, he was one of the funniest people I had ever met in my life. And I would look forward to these Friday parties so that I could go and listen to him do this, what possibly could be a very crazy thing. And then I lost track of him. And I didn't, I had good memories of him, but it was just this party, and maybe I saw him 6 or 7 times. Well, Dwayne's suicide note was different than most. He had a suicide note where instead of talking about all the people that had harmed him, he talked about the people in his life that had had a positive impact. And his mother was number 1. The girlfriend that he was dating at the time that I knew him was number 2. And I made number 3. I was his number 3. I went to his service. I made number 2 go with me. And it was just her and I at the service with his mother. No one else came for him. A few days later, I'm looking at Facebook, and he had made a request, a friend request, but I'm not a big Facebook guy. And he had wanted to go for drinks about a week earlier. And I hadn't drank in 30 years. So I turned down the friend request, and I didn't go for drinks with the man. Now, people that hear this story say, well, William, that's not your fault. Suicide is a very selfish thing. But you weren't his number 3. And I'm guessing that a number 3 could have made a difference to Dwayne. Maybe just that drink. Maybe just somebody listening to his story. When I was in the car, things were really bad. And I was thinking about suicide, and I would tell myself, well, today went okay. And can you do another day like today, tomorrow? I don't know that I can think long term. Can I do a week of todays? I don't know about that. But I would get myself to the next day just by saying, can you make it one more day? And then one more day like that. If I could have been that one more day for Dwayne, that would have meant a world to me. And still today, I got a lot of should-haves. And it's not just with him. I've lost other people that I should have been closer to that trusted me enough to say that they were in pain. And I should have seen their pain because I am empathic. And instead I was selfish and thought about myself. Those people are in this room today. Those people that will tell you that they're perfectly fine when they're not. I used to compartmentalize that people in one part of my life wouldn't know me from the other parts of my life. I got real good at learning what your wife's name might be, what your children did, what your hobbies were, where you vacationed. And I would ask you questions about yourself. And at the end of the conversation, if I made good eye contact, smiled at everything you said, and blinked a lot, then that would tell you that you were liked. And when you walked away from the conversation, you would say, boy, I sure do like that William guy. But because you like yourself. I mean, that's all you talked about. And they would walk away feeling really good about me and not knowing anything about me. People are like that in this room. People are like that all over the world. 1 out of every 4 say they are lonely and feel isolated. And that's worldwide. And it's getting worse all the time. So we have an obligation, like Francis said last week, to sit next to each other. You know, if you don't know somebody in church, sit next to a stranger. If you're in a row all by yourself, waiting for someone to sit next to you, be aggressive and go sit next to someone else that looks a lot like you, because we're all in this together. The odds of us actually being human, having all the molecules and all the stardust come together, is astronomical. I used to say that I want to kill myself, not out of sadness. I can handle sadness. It's the mundane, the day after day of it all. That's what I just couldn't handle, to think of another day like today. But the odds of us being alive are astronomical. And we're alive during this time. And our time may be over soon. So what's the point in killing myself? I might as well stick out and see what happens in the end. There's no reason not to hang out for another 10 or 15 years, and that's probably the most that I have left, to see what it's going to be like. Because it's a gift that we have if we treat it as such. It's also a prison if we treat it that way, and I've made that mistake. And I'm blessed that I don't see the world that way anymore. And hopefully my revelations, my learnings can help you as well. So we're going to take a moment to contemplate who your number 3s might be. Because you don't know who they are. I think the world can change if each one of us every day does a kindness for 3 strangers in our lives, within our capacities. And I'm not talking about giving $1 to the guy at 7-Eleven for his next fentanyl fix. I'm talking about looking for people in the world that need actual help. We could change the world if we all did what we could at every level. If the billionaire is doing that and everyone else is doing that. But it's 3 people a day, and I'm telling you, it's hard to do. Because we get so wrapped up in our schedule and our lives, and we put on blinders to the things that are around us and we don't see. So let's spend a moment, at least a minute, contemplating who in our lives we might be able to impact and go out into the world and make a difference. Thanks. Okay, our closing hymn is going to be number 205, Amazing Grace. You may stand in body or spirit. Thank you, Shifa.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. light shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
Going to be extinguishing the chalice now. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now we rise in body or spirit doing our closing blessing song. You may join in with the accompanying gestures. Oh, yes, sir, of course.